Today's computer problem at Cape Canaveral was distressing, perhaps, but for most Americans, not totally surprising.
Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for the third episode of Visioncast. It was we had like I think 3 weeks break, but today we have a very special guest, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's a lot of things under his belt. The first and foremost, like he's a champion in supply chain. He has built the product which is one of the leading product in the market right now, and beside that, like he's a very fond of hiking. So we can talk about that in a minute as well. So, hey, welcome, Ahmed. Show.
Hey, Tosif, and thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be on the platform.
Good. So, Ahmed, last week, and 2 weeks, we talked about the e-commerce, and then we talked about a little bit of IOM as well in our last podcast. Today, we just want to explore, further into the supply chain. But as the topic is about the multi-enterprise supply chain, so let's just start from there. What is that multi-enterprise supply chain, and why is the buzzword right now within the supply chain world?
I think it's more than buzzword, right? So, but at this point, the idea is that as I think your lineage of sessions kind of take us there, right? So from e-commerce to all the way to kind of fulfillment, right? So you're talking about getting your orders from e-commerce or your channels, routing them through solutions like IOM, which can kind of take you from your order as quickly as possible to either your enterprise system or to your supply chain, where there could be drop shipment or shipment from your suppliers. So that's one side of it. But the idea for multi-enterprise is to work as if all of these multiple enterprises work as one unit, right? And then there could be degrees of that you go from there, right? Are you going to be like even on the supply side, right? Are you going to be coordinating on your lead times or on your availabilities and working as one, or based on your, especially with the disruptions, right? Based on your basically outages, demands, manufacturing capabilities. How do you work together to kind of fulfill the whole, as one enterprise? Right? That's a whole idea of it. How much success we can get out of that? That's a big question still, right? But companies are heavily investing towards that, and I think that there's some kind of some advancement in that field in last few months, years.
So how this is different than the, if I say in a layman term, a regular supply chain, where companies are adopting.
Mhm. Regularly, the way it worked was traditionally what would happen is you'll go few seasons. Let's take example of fashion apparel, right? Like basically 4 to 6 seasons before something's supposed to hit the market or your stores, right? You start planning. You say, this is what I want. This is what my designers are making. This is what I want. This is the demand that I forecast. These are the products. This is how I want. This is how I want to be delivered. And then you lock your suppliers into contracts, and then you either charge them for delays and go from there, right? That's a traditional form. You're still talking to each other, collaborating, but the idea is it's the OEMs or the basically or the retailer kind of pushing everybody else button to get things done, right? With a collaborative and multi-enterprise kind of a way, the idea is you still do the same things, right? You still want to plan, you still want to have lead times and everything else, right? But now you're collaborating on even the supplier telling you, this is what I have, this is what I can promise, this is the extra promise that I can do. That I cannot deliver this, but I can deliver this, and work through all the disruptions and plan where it's not about just that's the charges or chargebacks, but it's more about getting things done and then and kind of delivering for the end customers, right? That's the whole idea.
I see. So, can you relate this multi-enterprise supply chain is a part of the digital transformation?
So when we talk about digital transformation, right, it's a larger kind of a term, which means multiple things, multiple people within the digital enterprise, right? But at this point, I think what we have learned in last 2 3 years is like we can't just talk about the digital transformation without thinking about the supply chain anymore, right? Because that's traditionally it's been about knowing your customer, delivering to your customer, and that's about it. How you deliver, how you kind of work with your backend to ensure your customer is actually getting things that they want at the right time, and with changing kind of demands, where today they want something, and in 3 months there's a change of like for example, COVID comes, right? People are,
Mhm.
instead of buying lipstick, they don't need lipsticks anymore, right? How do you react to that?
Yeah.
That whole kind of example kind of fulfills that.
That's interesting. So on the same thing, so how this entire enterprise supply chain technology can it stay resilient and agile, in time of disruption?
Again, I think the basics are the same. For resilience, first you need to know what you have, right, at the right time. So we cannot work with traditionally, again, with the supply chain, and going back to the supply chain, right? This is kind of my perspective, right? Where traditionally what happened was that uh, I might be manufacturing something, or getting something kind of made in China or Taiwan, or a country like that, right? My designer and those people in between, there could be multiple companies that manage my demand, and then in terms of getting it fulfilled, getting it routed, getting it shipped, but I don't want to know about that, right?
Okay.
The idea was that I have one contractor somewhere in US who manages everything else in between. I
Mhm.
might know my supplier, I know myself, and in between there's a host of unknowns. So my how my things get delivered, actual delivery, my way of doing was, oh, I'll just charge the company if there's a delay, right? The problem is, if you're not going to get things, you can charge them as much as possible, but your end customers is not getting what they wanted. So the idea for resilience is, how do we get kind of access to your level one, level two, level three kind of supply chain, right? Your suppliers,
Mhm.
you know what's happening before variance now, right? And if we keep going back to that kind of incident, right, where ships get stuck in Suez Canal, and people get to know weeks afterward that they were all impacted, right?
Mhm.
And this is where the resilience means you get in contact with yourself level one, two, and three, and you kind of track the whole thing and work as one multi-enterprise to ensure that that you're getting from point A to B. Cost is just one of the factor now, not the only factor remaining, right, or the most important.
So in your the visibility plays a very big role when you have the everything there. So I just read a recent Gartner report, and they're just very interestingly, they're saying that about 69% procurement professional saying that technology that is spent, which is a less focus on them at this point, because of all those different the IT budget got shrink, and actually 71% thinking that is IT budget is low priority. Do you see any of those changes, or they are just reinvesting into some other technology?
I think that's a very interesting question, right? I think the spend is there. Yes, it is less than what it was in last couple of years or the last 3 years, where people were kind of expecting the worst, right? So there was a lot of spend, and it's like, okay, how do we still get to our customers? Right? That question. I think we're getting back to sort of the previous normal, where we are thinking about more than just one direction, right? So it used to be just digital transformation, then it became just supply chain. I think the real balance is the end-to-end kind of piece, right? Where the investments are being done, where yes, we can't lose control of our supply chains anymore, but we need to have the end-to-end kind of thing, or the hybrid businesses that were kind of sprung up, where people who have never done direct to consumer started selling to consumers, right? A lot of those businesses have to rethink their policies and think, okay, is my business really set up for that? And if it is and it's succeeding, do I need to keep doing the other side of the work that I used to do before? So I think there's a lot of kind of self-reflection and readjustment that's happening in the market. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to keep going, right? And I think we can't just stop as an industry on the spending.
I see. So how industries are reacting with this new norm, like, from traditional supply chain to the multi-enterprise? Are they seeing this a change, or they're still like, resistant to like, apply this on their own network?
I think it's this. I won't call it resistance anymore, right? There used to be complete reluctance before COVID and all the disruption. At this point, there is a realization, right?
Mhm.
But I think, and I think, I would say rightly so. There's a lot of kind of consideration of what is the right investment, right? Is that a control tower? Does every company need a control tower? Is it collaboration? Is it business processes that need to be corrected before we talk about everything else, right? Because it's not just about technology, right? You can have the best technology, but if you don't have the users, if you don't have the business ready to adapt that technology, right? That
Mhm.
kind of doesn't fulfill the promise, right? So I think that's where I think there's a lot of deliberation that we are seeing in the market, where we're saying, okay, instead of just saying, oh, I want an e-commerce channel or a kind of pick up in store or in curb. That was one kind of, that's how COVID started, right? To, oh, I want to know where I am in my supply chain and then go like all in on control towers, right? I think what is required now is, I think, and the focus that we are seeing is more towards the collaboration side of multi enterprise, right? Which is like more a business process than technology. But again, these two go hand in hand.
And how the enterprise can choose, like, wisely, like, where to start from?
Again, that depends on enterprise, where they are in their overall supply chain, their journey, how many their maturity level on different things, right? Some enterprises are built towards kind of visibility. Some are built towards just fulfilling the customer demands. Some are built towards just delivering to the customer in a timely manner, right? The idea is based on where you are. That's where I think the path has to be kind of aligned, right? For a
I
business which is very focused towards you, right? Meaning all your suppliers, you might be the biggest consumer for them, right? Something like a control tower makes absolute sense. Where you're talking about rare commodities or a very controlled process that you have, that other parties are kind of basically they want to invest in to get the best. Yes, control towers and these kind of things work, right?
Okay.
But if you're in diverse business where your supply changes constantly, your suppliers change constantly, right? The focus more towards visibility without controlling is the key, right? Where you can be resilient without controlling, where you can adapt before it hits you. But again, not everything is in your control, right? So somewhere in between is the right balance.
And which industry do you think, like, can be the early adopters, or they already adopted, or some are like, in a process?
Yeah, so like utilities have always been in control in these kind of things.
Okay.
uh, Industries like transportation has traditionally not focused towards visibility as well as resilience, right? Because the idea was, this is my truck, this is my route, this is my customer, right? But at this point, because there's so much disruption, the sources are changing much quickly, right? Because I, as a kind of retailer, might be working with these four companies for last 20 years to get my own stuff, right?
Mhm.
Now, because I have to change those four companies and maybe I have 20 suppliers now, my transportation company can it connect to all 20 in those new routes, right? If I can't, I've lost the business that I've had for the last 20 years. So I don't have a solid base anymore. So reacting to that, going to new lines or new routes is the key, right? How do you do that? You collaborate. You collaborate with your basically other carriers to ensure that you provide a consistent experience at the right cost. Right,
Mhm.
right cost is again the key thing, where again your costs have been very kind of stable for a very long period of time, where you don't get much difference, but at the end of the day, you get the business every single time if you keep delivering on time. At this point, because of all of these changes, cost pressures are also there, right? So all these things kind of take you back into having the right partnerships, having the right network, having visibility of your network, and taking control of your network per se, right? If you have control of your network, you can react to all of these things. If you don't have control on your network,
Then you cannot. Yeah, it's a problem. Actually, in our last episode, we just talked about in detail about the ERP and other area, and I assume like ERP plays a very major role in some of the industries. So recently, like there's a new terminology that coming up in the market as a digital operational platform, that ERP. Is it related to like how this entire industry is moving, or what is the rationale behind, and what do you think like that where we are heading within the ERP and this digital operational platform?
Mhm. So I think I would call this as like the ERPs. I think they've overstayed in my mind, right? The traditional ERPs, the monolith side.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's required is all of these business processes are still required. Your finance is still, your order to cash, procure to pay, your invoice matching, your all of these things, or your SCM, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still required, right? But as we are moving forward, and as these companies are evolving, and you can't have a 10-year stable ERP, right? And 3 or 4 years kind of planning for the ERPs, 2 or 3 years implementing the ERP, a 20-year cycle to go through an ERP, right? I think with the changes and the way the companies are changing, right? How the market is changing as well. You need to have a solution which is much more composable and which can react to all of these changes and help you kind of stay on top of this, right? So I think I think as it's more becoming like headless for e-commerce, it's the same thing. It has to be composable kind of architecture where you kind of use from best of the ERP kind of way of doing things, best of the breed. So the combination of all of that, right? So all of these things we have gone through in last 2 or 3 decades, right? Best of the breeds, off the shelves, and then ERPs and doing everything in one go, and the digital transformation around that. I think where we are getting towards is more of a composable kind of architecture. Yeah.
So I'm sure you work with a lot of different enterprises and multi like billion-dollar enterprises. Where like can you just share like some interesting journey like transformation story that you have encountered where you see like that there was a resistance, but like when you actually showcase this entire solution, it just shows like a bottom line impact.
Yeah, I think again, I don't like the word resistance, but there's always a reluctance, right?
Reluctance, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is, I think, as all human, right? There's inertia to everything, right? We don't want to move. It's the same thing with tracking, right? I've had all my life the same problem, right? That how do I get off the couch and start moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once that happens, the journey is much more easier, right? You start seeing the scenery, you start seeing the benefits, your health and everything else, your mental health becomes better, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with these transformations, right? The first step is always the most difficult, right? So the due diligence can very easily become kind of a non-starter, right? I've seen companies who go through multiple instances of, okay, I need to do something. Do I really need to do something? That whole thing becomes a kind of paralysis, right? But once we get started, I think usually most companies, especially the large ones, I think they hit the stride and get going, right? So companies which have not changed for 20 years, especially in transportation, when they start moving and see the benefit, I think they've really kind of got on the bandwagon and started moving forward, right? So I think the key is having the right plan and the right kind of due diligence to get started. But I think once there, I think the rest of the journey becomes much more easier.
I see. Is it also cost effective?
Effective in terms of sorry, I didn't get the question.
In terms of like the margin.
So again, same thing, right? Some people like new cars, right? Why do you get a new car? Is it for the margins? Is it for the performance? Is it for the overall kind of getting point A to B, right? The speed might not change,
Mm-hmm.
but the whole experience, retaining your kind of customer as well as your own employees becomes much more easier, right?
I see.
As you're moving towards the most latest, greatest, and the newest technology, your processes are improving, your business is kind of consolidating. You're set up for a longer term, right? So you don't have an end of life in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're just moving that forward, right? So that's a necessary investment in my mind. Where yes, in certain cases, your cost would be optimized. Your ability to do business is another key thing, right? You've done business in a certain way. You're set up to do it in that certain way. The
Mm-hmm.
moment you start changing, reacting to the resilience, right, and the disruption and the resilience, do you have the systems for that?
Okay.
Are you set up for that, or are you set up to be just very stable, very strong in where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that whole thing, if you're investing, if you are thinking ahead, it becomes much more easy to react. If you're not, it just becomes kind of okay. You're very stable, but you're going down with the stable, right? So that's the right balance.
Yeah. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, Chat GPT and AI. So again, in the same report, what I was reading that all this investment that set aside last year was against the supply chain or IT transformation. Now they are reshuffling their budget around the AI.
Mhm.
So what is there in AI and this entire enterprise connectivity module?
I think AI has been coming. It's been a long time coming, right? I think we've
Mm-hmm.
been talking about it. We've been seeing some really interesting use cases coming to the forefront, right? In terms of enterprises and AI, I think at this point we are finally seeing that there's a general kind of realization that it is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next step is how do we kind of embed that into our processes, right? Problems remain the same. Chat GPT is not a problem. It's a tool to solve that problem, right? The problem is what your supply chain, you're getting in front of your customers, responding to your customers, improving efficiency, right? That's still the problem to be solved, right? How
Mm-hmm.
you solve it through an SCM, through an AI powered SCM towards advanced planning, getting the best kind of outlook. It's a same problem to be solved, right? It's just I think next step in the journey where we need to adopt it. We need to make the best use of AI, generative or otherwise, right? Because generative AI like ChatGPT is just one of the types of AI, right? And the idea is how do we best embed that into our process, right? I think, and that should be the focus. And I think that's where we'll get to once we get through the hype cycle of the technology, like any other technology.
I think that's good. I want to shift gear and want to talk to you. I was looking at the products that you build, partnering, which you're the brain behind the entire product. Can you just talk about the evolution of that product, or what is the solution, where it stand and how it started?
Absolutely, right? So brain is okay. Let's start from there, right? So yeah, I've been part of. I think I've been very fortunate to be part of VisionNet for last 2 decades or so, right? And I think my journey or our journey has been pretty kind of straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have always been an engineering firm trying to solve problems for our customers in the most efficient form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years back when we started working, going from off the shelf or a customized software to more of an ERP kind of a world, right? The
Mm-hmm.
idea was how do we serve our customers better, right? What are the gaps? So the gaps that we were finding were towards and as we go towards the modular or composed architecture, these are becoming more and more apparent is there's a world around these systems, right? How do we make those systems work, right? How do we connect these systems? How do we ensure that they all work as one? And
Mm-hmm.
then those systems are now getting into enterprises. So multi-enterprise is same extension of that, right? So your multiple enterprises, your multiple systems, the best of the breed system that you have custom built, how do they all talk in a kind of in a standardized way? Right? So the connectivity was the first step. And as we connect, and the idea is how do we bring visibility around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were all built independently. They all have a different backbone. So
Mm-hmm.
now that we have given a connectivity backbone, can we also provide the visibility? So for large enterprises, which has complex kind of landscape for technology, right? How do we kind of ensure that they all your business is not tied between, oh, I have SAP versus Dynamics versus a order management system versus five commerce platforms, right? The idea is, how is that serving my customer? What is the time from a customer placing an order to that order being fulfilled? What is my accuracy? Uh, what are my bottlenecks, technology or otherwise? So those kind of things is that whole visibility to end to end, and going all the way to your multiple enterprises. If you're not fulfilling, somebody else is fulfilling. How do we ensure that your customer experience remains the same? Right, you can still provide the visibility, right? And the third part, I think that we are recently moving towards is, okay, now that we have the connectivity, visibility, how can we help plan in ahead? How do we allow these enterprises to truly collaborate, plan, share their demands, share their ability to manufacture, right, or to ability to deliver, to truly kind of come up with a end-to-end solution.
I see. So I think that's the 360 circle. How you saying, like, that the connectivity, visibility, and control. How you can all three comes in this.
Absolutely.
This is like important. If I take like very layman sort of thing in my home, I know it's like maybe it's not relevant to the enterprise, but I have the smart lock, like with a different app. I have the cameras with a different app, and then other thing is a different sprinkler system is a different thing. That's like so much like you are connected, but visibility is like I think is very important. Like just in a layman term, I just want to like get.
But that's a very kind of interesting example, right? And if we talk about these, I think this everybody's going through that, and that's one of the interesting pieces where technology, every layman is also using it, right? Yeah. So all of these devices were built independently. The first step was, okay, can we connect through a Wi-Fi or a secure network, something like that, right? That was the first step.
Yeah.
And that's a solve that industry kind of did, where they came on one or two or three different formats. The next step was, okay, now if all of them are there, right? Can I have a kind of a home station where I can see them all, right?
Yeah.
First step was, I just understand my own devices, fine. But as a customer, I have bought these in over 5 years, right? I didn't know ahead what was the best kind of tool, right? So the next step was, can I have the end-to-end connectivity there, right?
Yeah.
Third part is, what else do I need? Right?
Yep.
Do I need to go back to basically a security agency? Do I need to go back to my utilities companies if there's an outage or something like that? So that's the next step, right? I think we are moving towards that, and it's pretty much same for most enterprises, right? The same cycle, and then the next step would be the AI, right? How do I optimize it? Yeah. How does that thing talk back to me, like in fiction movies from 20 years back, right? I'm talking to a device. That device could be Alexa, right? But that's still not gone to a point where they talk back to me and kind of come up with suggestions, and I can simulate things, right? And I think that's where we're getting to.
Okay. I just want to like one question, which is like, I know that you are one of the speaker in upcoming Gartner supply chain event, which is one of the largest one. Can you just like in 30 seconds like just talk about like what are the topic that you are going to talk about in the supply chain?
Yeah, I think I'm stuck in supply chain, right? So I'm just kidding. So the idea that we're kind of going with is same thing, right? The resilience, the control, and then and the visibility around supply chain. How do we best move forward as an industry towards that, right? Things like ChatGPTs are here to stay. Things like what we have learned in the last 3 years are there, right? How do we combine these things and as an industry, right? We really move forward. I mean, that should be an interesting topic, right? As
okay. And in 30 seconds, I just want like you to talk about like that. Do you see like are you thinking about like implementing this into your hiking, or like something that you're trying to innovate?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get time to do the hiking at this point, right? But yes,
I see.
yeah, I think most things in life requires all of that. We are already using apps to do that. So
That's awesome.
I need a buzzer to wake me up every on weekends right now.
That's good. The time passed really fast, Ahmed. It was very interesting, informative conversation. I think the way that you wrap things up, like, with making this a layman example, I think I'm sure, like, people understand. We will have, like, question comes in, like, then we'll share with you. But you gotta promise, like, after this speaking session with the supply chain, you'll come back and, like, give us the overview of, like, how it went.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much, and looking for all the best with your speaking. Thanks.